Yet another matter that we took up last week was the purpose of defining a pivotal biblical term, lawlessness. Now, evangelical Christians immediately tend to think of the coming Antichrist as the lawless one. And so they envision a very bad man who scoffs at societal laws or sees himself above the law, somewhat like a tyrant or an outlaw or a gang member. But that is an incorrect mental picture. In fact, biblically speaking, the term lawless applies to all who turn their backs on God's Torah. The Greek word for law is nomos. And for lawless, without law, outside the law, it is anomos. Now, I urge you to commit those two Greek words to memory. It shouldn't be terribly hard to do because English uses similar grammatical word structure. Example, we call a set of agreed to ethical principles moral, and the lack of adherence to proper ethical morals amoral, without morals. Amoral, however, is not the same as immoral. Immoral means a person recognizes the ethical principles but decides to break them. However, an amoral person recognizes no ethical principles as valid, binding, or pertaining to them. So nomos and anomos work exactly the same way. Anomos does not mean to break the law. It means to refuse to recognize the law as valid or pertaining to oneself. But what's essential for us to remember is that in the Bible, the term law is always referring either to God's law or to Hebrew traditions that purport to convey the underlying principles of God's law. And the only biblical law that exists from God's perspective is the law of Moses, the Torah. So lawless or lawlessness in the Bible is not referring to breaking of societal laws or international law or any set of laws that are man-made. Now, I don't want you to think that this understanding that is a foundational belief in teaching at Seed of Abraham Ministries concerning the continuing relevance of the Torah law is a unique one for us. F. Bruce, in his New International Commentary on the book of Acts, says this about the use of the word lawless in the Bible. Lawless men are meant in the sense of being outside of the law of Israel. And what is the law of Israel? The Torah, the law of Moses. So before we reread part of Acts chapter 2, let's move from theory to practice as I hit you right between the eyes with an inescapable and uncomfortable reality that each believer is faced with. Being labeled in the Bible as anomos is always a wicked, negative thing, Old and New Testaments. And sadly, dangerously, I think, most of Christianity today, just like the Romans who crucified Christ, say that God's Torah, the law of Moses, doesn't pertain to them. Thus, most of Christianity today, by every biblical standard and definition, has classified itself and proudly proclaims to be anomos, without God's law. I'll let you ponder that as we move along.